On the vast, wind-swept coast, a group of indigenous people prepared to face the most challenging day of their lives. The horizon, covered with dark clouds, announced the arrival of gigantic waves up to 40 meters high that roared and mercilessly struck the shore. However, there was no option to retreat. The need was urgent. They had to collect 3 tons of fish to meet the weekly quota, a commitment that supported their families and their community. Fear mingled with determination as they checked their nets and tied up the boats. Each one knew the risks, but also the importance of their work. They knew that that day they would not only fight against the fury of the sea, but also against their own limits. United by tradition and survival, they ventured into the raging waters, ready to face the worst day of their lives with courage and hope. On the vast, restless expanse of the open sea, a group of seasoned fishermen from an indigenous coastal community embarked on their most challenging journey yet. The day had begun with darkened skies, heavy with the threat of rain. The wind howled through the rigging of their sturdy wooden vessels as they pushed off from the shoreline, their faces set with determination and resolve. These were men and women whose ancestors had read the language of the tides and the clouds, whose hands were calloused by years of labor and whose spirits were bound to the rhythm of the ocean. Their mission was clear and urgent. They needed to bring back at least 3,000 kilograms of fish. This was not just a matter of livelihood, but of survival. Their families and community depended on this catch to sustain them through the coming months. Supplies were running low, and the monsoon season was fast approaching, threatening to cut them off from the bounty of the sea. As their boats cut through choppy waters, the first drops of rain began to fall, cold and relentless. The surface of the ocean shifted from blue to slate gray, reflecting the turmoil of lightning forked across the sky, illuminating the horizon in stark, fleeting flashes. Thunder rolled in great, echoing waves over the water, a deep and ancient voice that seemed to challenge the very presence of the fishermen. Despite the growing tempest, the group pressed on, guided by their knowledge of the sea's secret places, reefs teeming with life, hidden currents that carried schools of fish. They cast their nets with practiced precision, each movement a testament to years of tradition passed down from generation to generation. The nets sank beneath the surface, disappearing into the shadowy depths. Every pull was a test of strength and faith, as the wind threatened to rip the lines from their hands and the rain stung their faces. Hours passed, each one more grueling than the last. Water pooled at the bottom of the boats, sloshing around their boots. The storm surged, waves rising higher, crashing against the hulls and sending icy spray into the air. Yet, even as exhaustion set in, the fishermen worked together with unspoken coordination. Some steadied the boats, others tended to the nets, while a few kept watch, eyes scanning both sea and sky for signs of danger or hope. Their hearts pounded with anxiety. Would they find enough fish in these punishing conditions? Would the storm overpower their efforts, sending them back empty-handed? But then, as if in answer to their silent prayers, the nets grew heavy, almost impossibly so. Muscles aching, they hauled them up, hand over hand, until the silver bodies of hundreds, then thousands of fish spilled into their boats. Mackerel, sardines, and snapper glistened in the fleeting flashes of lightning. A living treasure rested from the depths. Wordlessly, they redoubled their efforts, moving with the urgency born of necessity and hope. Each net brought in more fish, though the work became ever more hazardous. The storm was at its peak now. Waves towering, winds howling, rain lashing down in sheets. The boats heaved and pitched, threatening to capsize under the weight of their precious cargo. The fishermen shouted encouragement to one another, their voices nearly lost in the chaos. But their unity was their strength. They trusted in one another, in their boats, and in the wisdom that had been passed down through the ages. When one fell, another was there to help him up. When fatigue threatened to overwhelm, a glance or a word was enough to rally flagging spirits. They were bound together not just by their shared task, but by their shared identity, guardians of the sea, stewards of its gifts. Finally, as dawn began to break and the storm clouds started to thin, they took stock of their haul. The boats, heavy laden, were nearly overflowing with fish. Through grit and perseverance, they had met their target, 3,000 kilograms, perhaps even a bit more. Relief washed over them, mingling with exhaustion and a sense of triumph. Against the fury of the elements, against all odds, they had succeeded. The journey back to shore was slow and cautious. The storm's anger was spent, leaving behind a restless, churning sea. Rays of sunlight broke through the cloud, glinting off the wet decks and the scales of the fish. The fishermen guided their boats with care, mindful of the weight and the dangers that still lingered in the aftermath of the tempest. As they approached the coastline, their families stood waiting, eyes straining toward the horizon. When the boats finally appeared, battered but unbowed, a cheer rose up from the gathered crowd. Children ran to help, hands eager to touch the bounty that meant another season of security and nourishment. Elders offered words of blessing and thanks, honoring both the courage of the fishermen and the generosity of the sea. Together, they shared their story of the storm, of fear and doubt, of unity and endurance. It became another chapter in the long history of their people, a tale to be told and retold around fires on quiet nights. It was a reminder that even in the darkest times, hope and determination could yield abundance, and that the bond between community and nature was sacred, enduring through every trial. As the sun rose higher, drying the last traces of rain from their faces, the fishermen rested. Their hearts were full, not just with pride in their accomplishment, but with gratitude for the sea that sustained them, and for the strength they found in one another. The storm had tested them, but together they had prevailed. And in that victory, they found not just survival, but the reaffirmation of who they were. A people of the sea, resilient and unbroken. After days of relentless struggle against the wind and rain, the group of Indian fishermen finally returns to the shore. Their faces, weathered by the sun and salt water, reflect accumulated fatigue, but also the pride of those who have overcome the challenges imposed by nature. The boats, humble and sturdy, glide slowly over the surface of the sea, carrying in their holds the fruit of collective labor. 3,000 kilograms of fish, a figure that marks the fulfillment of their demanding weekly quota. On the beach, the humid air carries the unmistakable scent of the ocean, mixed with the promise of abundance. The women and children, who anxiously awaited the return of their loved ones, hurry to greet the fishermen. The greetings are brief. There is an almost sacred urgency in unloading the baskets and nets full of fish that still pulse with life. Expert hands separate the specimens by size and species, working in perfect synchrony. as if each movement were choreographed by generations of experience. Among the catch, the metallic shine of the tunas stands out under the rising sun. Their robust bodies, symbols of strength and endurance, represent one of the most valuable pieces of the catch. Alongside them, medium-sized sharks lie carefully lined up, their rough skin and powerful jaws a testament to an underwater struggle that only the bravest dare to face. There are also snappers, jacks, and other fish that, without having the fame of the tuna or the mystery of the shark, are equally essential for the food and economic sustenance of the community. The work has not been easy. During the week, the weather became a relentless adversary. The sea, rough and covered with foam, tested the fishermen's skill, forcing them to navigate against treacherous currents and unpredictable gusts of wind. The storms, with their thunder and lightning, threatened to wreck not only the boats, but also the hope of meeting the imposed quota. However, the determination and solidarity of the group prevailed, and each day at sea was an act of courage and perseverance. As the sun rises, the beach transforms into a bustle of activity. The fishermen distribute the catch. One part will be destined for the local market, where the sale of tunas and sharks guarantees vital income for the families. Another portion will be reserved for personal consumption, ensuring fresh food for the coming days. The elders oversee the selection, recalling stories from previous years when the sea was even more generous or when scarcity forced the community to seek alternatives to survive. Not all fish are the same. Tuna, for example, is the most sought after by buyers from distant cities, who pay high prices for its firm flesh and unmistakable flavor. Sharks, although more difficult to catch and process, are valued for their fins and meat, which are used in traditional recipes and local medicine. The other fish, less showy but equally nutritious, are destined for the daily table, prepared in stews, roasted or sun-dried to preserve them longer. This achievement, the 3,000 kilograms of fish, is not just a number. It is the result of an ancestral tradition, of knowledge passed down from parents to children, of respect for the sea and its cycles. It is also a tangible demonstration of the community's ability to adapt, learning to read the signs of nature, to anticipate its changes, and to work in harmony with it. Every net cast, every hook submerged, every oar cutting through the water is an act of faith that the sea will continue to provide as long as it is respected and cared for. However, the joy of success does not erase the worries. The fishermen know that the balance of the ecosystem is fragile. In recent years, the presence of large industrial ships and indiscriminate fishing have reduced fish populations in some areas. That is why the group has adopted sustainable practices. They respect fishing bans, avoid catching young specimens, and keep the nearby waters clean. The weekly quota is not only an economic goal, but also a self-imposed limit to ensure that the resource does not run out. At the end of the day, the group gathers around an improvised campfire. There they share food, stories, and meaningful silences. They talk about the challenges faced, the strategies that worked, and what they could improve for the next outing. The children listen attentively, learning not only the art of fishing, but also the value of effort and the importance of community. Night falls, and the sound of the waves accompanies the well-deserved rest of those who with courage and skill have managed to meet the weekly quota. They know that the sea is unpredictable and that each day is a new challenge, but they also know that as long as they work together and respect the inherited wisdom, they will be able to continue drawing from the ocean the sustenance needed for their families. Thus, life in the fishing village continues, marked by the rhythm of the tides and the relentless pulse of work. The 3,000 kilograms of fish are more than a numerical achievement. They are a symbol of unity, perseverance, and hope. Under the stars, the nets drying in the wind, and the salty smell of fresh fish blend with the certainty that, at least for this week, they have managed to overcome bad weather, uncertainty, and adversity. The sea, generous and feared, has once again been the stage where courage and collective effort turn into life. In the heart of the coastal lands, where the sun rises over shimmering waves and the air is thick with the scent of salt and promise, a group of skilled fishermen prepared for a journey that would test their resolve and unity. These men, descendants of ancient tribes who had lived in harmony with the sea for generations, gathered as dawn painted the world in hues of gold and pink. Their faces bore the marks of wisdom and weather, and their hands, calloused but steady, spoke of years spent battling both gentle tides and furious storms. The weekly quota was clear. 3,000 kilograms of fish must be brought back to sustain their families and ensure the well-being of the entire community. Every member understood the weight of this responsibility, not just in the literal sense of the fish they would haul, but in the hopes and sustenance those fish represented. It was not simply a matter of survival. It was a matter of tradition, of pride, and of honoring the pact their ancestors had long ago made with the ocean. As their boats, carved from sturdy wood and painted with symbols of their tribe, pushed off from the shore, the men sang songs, both to steady their hearts and to offer gratitude to the sea. With practiced hands, they hoisted sails, adjusted nets, and steered toward the deep blue expanse that stretched beyond the horizon. The journey to the rich fishing grounds was long, and the open sea was unpredictable, but their spirits were buoyed by the knowledge that they faced these trials together. Hours passed as the land faded from view, replaced by the endless undulation of waves and the occasional cry of a distant seabird. The fishermen cast their nets, skillfully reading the water, searching for signs of the great schools that moved beneath the surface. Every splash, every tug on the line brought a ripple of excitement, a reminder that the ocean, though vast and mysterious, could also be generous to those who respected its moods. The first day at sea was met with modest success. The nets filled slowly, the catch smaller than hoped, but the men remained undeterred. They worked in harmony, each person playing a vital role. Whether it was mending a torn net, steering through choppy waters, or simply offering words of encouragement. At night, as the boats drifted under a canopy of stars, they shared stories and laughter, their camaraderie shining as brightly as the constellations above. On the second day, the wind shifted, bringing with it the promise of better fortune. The water, now clearer and calmer, revealed flashes of silver as schools of fish swam near the surface. With renewed vigor, the fishermen cast their nets once more, their timing impeccable. The nets grew heavy with the weight of their catch, and as they hauled them aboard, cheers erupted across the boats. Each glistening fish was a testament to their perseverance and skill. Still, the goal was not yet reached. The tally of their catch was carefully recorded, every kilogram counted, every effort measured against the ever-present need to provide for those waiting back on shore. As the days passed, the men grew weary, but the thought of their families, children with bright eyes, elders who depended on these journeys, fueled their determination. On the final day at sea, with the quota still just beyond their grasp, a storm threatened on the horizon. Dark clouds gathered, and the wind howled, sending waves crashing against the boats. The fishermen faced a choice: retreat and return with what they had, or press on and risk the elements for the sake of their community. Drawing strength from each other and from the wisdom passed down through generation, they chose to stay. Through rain and wind, they worked as one, their movements synchronized by years of experience and mutual trust. The sea, sensing their resolve, finally yielded its bounty. The nets grew so heavy that it took every ounce of strength and the combined effort of all to haul them aboard. As the last fish was secured, the sun broke through the clouds, casting a radiant light over the exhausted but triumphant crew. With their boats laden with the full quota, 3,000 kilograms of fish, they set course for home. The journey back was one of reflection and relief. They had faced adversity, both from the elements and the uncertainty of the catch, but their unity and perseverance had seen them through. As the coastline came into view, the men stood a little taller, their hearts full with the knowledge of a job well done. Upon their return, the entire community gathered to welcome them. Children ran along the shore, waving and calling out, while elders looked on with pride. The catch was unloaded, carefully weighed and distributed, ensuring that every family would have enough to eat. The women prepared feasts, and laughter filled the air as stories of the journey were shared around the fire. This was more than just a successful fishing expedition. It was a reaffirmation of the bonds that held the community together. A testament to what could be achieved when people worked in harmony with nature and with one another. The fishermen knew that the ocean would always present new challenges, but they also knew that as long as they faced those challenges together, they would always find a way to provide. That week, as families gathered to share meals made possible by the sea's bounty, there was a palpable sense of gratitude. The children listened intently to tales of bravery and cooperation, learning that their future depended not just on individual skill, but on the strength of their community. The elders, in turn, offered blessings and advice, ensuring that the wisdom of the past would continue to guide the next generation. In the quiet moments, as the sun set over the calm waters and the village settled into night, the fishermen reflected on their journey. They understood that each expedition was more than a physical endeavor. It was a spiritual one, a dance with the forces of nature that demanded respect, patience, and unity. And as long as they honored that dance, they knew that the sea would provide and their families would thrive. The story of these fishermen is a reminder of the enduring power of community, the importance of tradition, and the deep connection between people and the natural world. It is a story of resilience, of hope, and of the quiet triumphs that sustain us all. The sea holds a timeless allure, its vastness promising adventure and abundance. Yet beneath its surface lies a reality often overlooked. Fishing at sea remains one of the most hazardous professions in the world. Every year, thousands of fishermen set out before dawn, braving unpredictable weather, turbulent waves, and the inherent dangers of working on unstable decks. In places like Galicia, Spain, The risks have been particularly stark. In 2023 alone, maritime accidents in this region increased by 24%, accounting for more than a quarter of all such incidents in the country. Statistics reveal just how precarious this way of life can be. For every 100,000 workers in the fishing sector, over 4,300 accidents were reported in Galicia last year, with a mortality rate of nearly 24 per 100,000. The causes are as complex as the sea itself. While storms and rough weather are always a threat, most accidents stem from the treacherous conditions on board, slippery surfaces, sudden movements of the vessel, and sometimes a lack of proper training. These factors can turn a routine day into one of tragedy in a matter of seconds. Beyond the human toll, fishing also poses risks to the marine environment. Methods like trawling not only endanger fishermen, but also claim the lives of tens of thousands of seabirds each year, underscoring the need for more sustainable practices. Every trip to sea is a reminder the ocean commands respect. For those who make their living from its waters, vigilance, preparation, and ongoing education are essential. Safety measures and awareness are not just formalities, they are lifelines. As we enjoy the fruits of the sea, it's important to remember the courage and care required to bring them to our tables and to honor those who risk everything every time they set sail.